Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. John Christopher Alexander sitting in for the big John Mason, the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, slaying the rhinos one vote at a time. I have a very special guest who will be on the show, possibly for the full hour tonight. Brendan Trosclair, very successful businessman, candidate for Louisiana Secretary of State. I look forward to talking with him tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about the Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group first. I sat down in the legislature for 2 years in a row, 2021 and 2022 during the session, and I watched rhino globalist Republicans kill good conservative legislation, vaccine mandates, critical race theory in our schools, election integrity, you name it, the rhinos killed it. Very secretly sometimes in committee, sometimes in the halls of the legislature, sometimes in the full chamber. But they would destroy the conservative agenda. One of the issues that they destroyed was these vaccine mandates and this coercive pressure that our government put on us in the form of John Bell Edwards for about 18 months about these vaccine mandates. And I'm going to ask Brandon tonight about a case in which he was involved and how that came out, because it's a truly monumental story, and I can't wait for him to talk about that. But anyway, I'm sitting down there and watching what these rhino Republicans do. And then when the session's over, they go back to their districts and they talk about what good conservatives they are. And I got tired of watching them lie to their constituents. So we got together with some other patriots and formed Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. Go to www.lacag.org. Our motto is slaying the rhinos one vote at a time, and we will do it together. I want to go to Brandon now. Brandon, are you with us?
Yes, sir. I'm here, Mr. Chris. Appreciate you.
Great to have you on the show, Brandon.
Thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas, man. I want to talk to you to start about, if you could, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, and then I want to get into a couple of other more specific issues.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me, Chris. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised right here in God's country in Gonzales, Louisiana. I have a beautiful wife, Katie Trosclair. We'll be married New Year's Eve. Will be 16 years. And I have two young kids. Brianna is 14 and my son is 12. And I've been in the grocery business pretty much my whole life. And I enjoy that business. I enjoy the opportunity to go in every single day and focus on the customer. It's all about customer service to me. I tell our folks all the time that we're in the customer service business and we happen to sell groceries. And so very, very excited about this upcoming Secretary of State's race, and looking forward to traveling the entire state and talking with a lot of folks out there.
Yeah. Well, I actually had the opportunity, Brandon, just a few days ago to come out to one of your stores and eat a great lunch with you. And I have to tell you, I was so impressed, and I think I told you this when I came out and visited with you, that there's such a special atmosphere inside your stores. And I don't know whether it's the Holy Spirit. It probably is, quite frankly, but there's an atmosphere of joy there that you don't see in too many places. And I think that comes down from the top and, from where you are. So thank you for having me out there. But I was very impressed when I came in and got to visit with some of your employees. But I wanted to ask you, Brandon, I know that you, as you just said, you're running for Louisiana Secretary of State. To me, that is such an important office, because the Secretary of State in Louisiana controls the security of our elections. And obviously, if our vote and our elections are not secure, it really doesn't matter what else we do, because if we can't count on our vote. But what led? But before I get into that, I want to ask you about the vaccine lawsuit in which you were involved with your employees? Because I was blown away when I read that story. I know it had to do with the vaccine federal mandates, but tell the listeners a little bit about how that came about and what the process was and the outcome of that.
Absolutely, Chris. So just like everybody else, you hear day to day the changes going around in our country and with that's related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And President Biden came out and said that he was going to have a new mandate for any employers that had more than 100 employees, that they had to take the vaccine or the employer had to fire them. I was outraged as soon as I heard that. That's a massive overreach of the federal government. And I tell people all the time that I don't like bullies on the playground, and I especially don't like bullies when they're our own government. And so there were some unclear things about it, whether or not it applied to multiple ownership entities or whatnot. But needless to say, I found out through Garrett Graves that it would affect us. And so immediately I knew that we had to stand up and we had to do something. Joe Biden doesn't belong in my business, and I don't belong in the medical decisions of my employees. That's their personal decisions between them, their family, and their doctor. And you
sued, Brandon, and you sued the federal government, and you won at the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of your employees. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So we were the first people to file in the United States. Didn't expect that. I honestly expected to be one of thousands upon thousands of people to sue. And came down to it, there was 32 of us that sued. 26 of those were Republican attorney generals. And we were the first to file in federal court. And we sued Joe Biden and also OSHA. And we immediately got an injunction with the Fifth Circuit just a few days after filing. And in the long run, we went over to the Supreme Court this past January. And like you said, we won. It's estimated to save 80 to 100 million jobs across the country. And I was certainly proud to play a part in that.
That is so monumental. You know, Brandon, there are a lot of people, there's a lot of men particularly who walk around and they talk a good game about freedom and liberty.
Correct.
But when it comes down to putting their money where their mouth is and actually showing some backbone and some courage, they fall short. You not only talked the talk, but you walked the walk, and you delivered a resounding blow in favor of human liberty and human freedom in the face of massive government encroachment, where the federal government was basically telling an American citizen what they have to inject in their body. And when we come to a point where that goes unchallenged, we've really lost the republic. And so for you to have stood up well before you had made any decision to run for any statewide office really is the measure of the man, in my view. And I just and that was one of the things that impressed me so much when I first started reading about you, the fact that you showed such courage to stand up for freedom, because if we don't have freedom, we don't have much of anything. So I want to move on, if I could now, Brenda, to ask you a little bit about, we may have to go to a break shortly, but what attracted you and what made you decide that it was important for you to run for this position, for the Louisiana Secretary of State?
Well, Chris, I appreciate you asking that question, man. And it really has the same thing to do with the vaccine mandate. Is I love my community, I love my state, I love my country, and I love my family, and I want to make it a better place than what I inherited. And when the government is going to overreach, and when the government is not going to give to us the results that we need as citizens and taxpayers, then I think we need to take action. And so,
Brandon, we're going to go to a quick break here, but I want to talk about exactly the action that you decided to take and what our plans are going forward when we get back. I have Brandon Trosclair, candidate for Secretary of State, J. Christopher Alexander, and we'll be back shortly on the Big John Mason Show. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. John Christopher Alexander in for the Big John Mason, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, slaying the legislative rhinos one vote at a time. I have the pleasure of visiting tonight with Brandon Trosclair, successful businessman for many, many years and current candidate for the Louisiana Secretary of State. Brandon, if you had to name two or three of the things when you look at our election system, which is controlled and secured by the Secretary of State, our election system in Louisiana right now, what concerns you, the top two or three concerns that you have?
Well, Chris, I have a lot of concerns, but I want to pivot back for just a second. Before the break, you asked me why I'm doing this, and I'll tell you why. And like I said, you mentioned it just a while ago, and I agree with you. But the most sacred thing that we have as Americans is the right to vote. And what we have going on in Louisiana is we have untrustworthy voting machines. We have allegations by Republicans and Democrats of bid rigging by our Secretary of State. Our public has lost trust not only in government but in the electoral process. And our current Secretary of State has had 6 years to fix this mess, and he's only made it worse. And so when I'm elected Secretary of State, we're going to clean that up. We're going to immediately draft legislation to get rid of the machines and go to hand-marked paper ballots. Another major thing that we have going on is we outsource everything. And we don't even outsource it to Louisiana companies or Louisiana people. We outsource it to other states and other countries. We will immediately stop doing that. And if there's any business that isn't owned and operated by the Secretary of State's office, it will be by Louisiana companies and Louisiana citizens. Another big thing that we have going on is third-party voter registration. We currently outsource that to a third party called Civics. They're located in Indiana, so we don't even count our votes here, we don't count our votes here, and our registration isn't here as well. So we're going to fix that. We're going to bring a level of professionalism and transparency and leadership to the Secretary of State's office that we haven't seen in quite a while at the Secretary of State's office or in government. But we're going to be very transparent and professional.
Yeah, Brandon, let me follow up with one of the things that you just said. You're saying that currently our votes, Louisiana's votes, citizens' votes, are not counted in this state?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Our votes are outsourced to a company called Civics, which is in Indiana, and they're the ones that are counting our votes and then sending it back. And again, we know for a fact that those machines and that data is being manipulated. Our Secretary of State knows that data is being manipulated, but yet he's dug his heels in the ground, and he's trying to write yet another RFP that is sided with Dominion voting machines yet again, and he's not making the changes that multiple experts have come in and told him. We've had electoral committees here in the Senate, and every expert that was there was saying that we needed to change course and get away from the Dominion voting machines. And our Secretary of State, I think it's very hard-headed, but he's dug his heels in with them. That's just
it's interesting, Brandon. It's interesting that you say that because I've been reading a lot about this and I've been following this issue, and it's like the big elephant in the room. You know, before Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, all the national Democrats were warning us about how the machine-based voting systems can be hacked. Any machine can be hacked. They were all saying it. Republicans obviously agreed with them. You have Alex Haldeman, who testified in front of the voting commission, and many other experts throughout the country who say that every machine-based voting system can be hacked, and they're so sophisticated at the way they do it that even the election officials can't even detect it. I almost fell off my chair when I heard Alex Haldeman say that the clerks of court and the election officials cannot even detect the cyber hacking. It's so sophisticated. And Kyle Ardwan was sitting right in front of him when he said it. And yet Kyle Ardwan, in his public comments, most recently in a newspaper article, and then in his fundraising letter on November 30th, he never, ever talks about the vulnerabilities of these machines. I find it bizarre. And do you have any idea why he will not confront directly the vulnerability of the voting machines?
Look, man, from what I understand, Kyle seems to be a nice fella. Why, I have no idea. It sure points to and leads to that he's beholden to these vendors and these third parties. I'm not beholden to anybody. I'm a businessman. I'm an outsider and a reformer, and we're going to go in there and we're going to fix this system and we're going to change this system. But let's talk about a few of those things that our Secretary of State is going out there and saying. The only thing he can say out there right now is that we had the 6th best elections in the United States. So let's break it down, Chris. Our overall score, according to that Heritage Institute study, is a 75. That's unacceptable to me as a taxpayer. We go and you look at the accuracy of our voter registration rolls, we have an F. The verification of citizenship, we have an F. That's unacceptable, Chris. This has to be fixed. Voter ID implementation, we have an F. This has to be fixed. And on day one, when we take office, we're going to work very hard. We'll be very transparent. We won't be beholden to anybody except for the people of Louisiana. That's the bottom line. We're going to fix this.
Yeah. One thing you have demonstrated, Brandon, is that you know how to handle employees. I mean, you have, between 500 and 1,000 employees now. And so you obviously have demonstrated in the private sector that you know how to manage people and to run a very successful business in the private enterprise, which is so important to be able to do that. What about the voter rolls, Brandon? There's been a lot of talk about cleaning our voter rolls. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mentioned it just a while ago. Our voter rolls, they're managed by a third-party company called Civics. They're in Indiana. That leads to so much easier way to corrupt the system. You got one portal in and one portal out, and that can be manipulated so bad. What I want to do, what we will do, is that we're going to have the registrar of voters in every single parish manage the voter rolls for their parish. So you're going to have 64 registrar of voters managing those in each and every parish instead of one outside company out of state managing that and no telling what's going on. So we're going to have the registrar of voters not only do early voting, that's their role now, doing early voting, but we're going to have them be registrar of voters and register those deals. We're going to clean up the voter roll. We're going to enact current law on the books. We're going to get rid of this active and inactive voters. There's no such thing as active and inactive. You're either a registered voter or you're not. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to cleaning up those voter rolls. And like I said, I just mentioned our accuracy of our voter registration list, according to that Heritage Institute study that Kyle's touting, we have an F.
And it sounds to me like you're talking about returning these core duties more on the local level, making each clerk of court's office responsible for ensuring the accuracy of its own affairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Power to the people. You mentioned it earlier. I'm in the customer service business, and I happen to sell groceries. As your next Secretary of State, I'm still going to be in the customer service business, but it's going to be to deliver safe, secure, and honest elections to the people of Louisiana. Definitely putting the power back to the people where it belongs.
Yeah. I want to tell you about a scenario recently. It's not a secret. My organization, Brandon, filed a public records request to the Louisiana Secretary of State requesting all communications to and from the Secretary of State to any and all clerks of court, registrar of voters, or anybody on the Election Commission regarding election issues in light of the new law 480. And do you know that in 600 pages of internal communications between those officials, not one single time was there any meaningful discussion about the vulnerabilities of our voting machines or the need to clean up our voter rolls? Not one single discussion. And I was stunned when I got that. When I got
Chris.
It blows my mind, Brandon. And let me tell you something. There were communications from very reputable people that I read into that office saying, what are we going to do about these issues? And not one discussion. Does that surprise you?
Not really. I mean, this office has time and time again showed a lack of backbone and leadership. And that's why I'm running. We're going to bring reform to this office, and we're going to run it like a business, and we're going to be very transparent. and bring in common sense alternatives to what we have now. But again, this office has time and time again has failed us when it comes to leadership.
Yeah. I have a couple more questions I want to ask you. Can I hold you over through the break?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brandon. John Christopher Alexander with the Big John Mason Show, visiting with Brandon Trosclair, our next Louisiana Secretary of State, and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. J. Christopher Alexander sitting in for the Big John Mason, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, www.lacag.org, slaying the legislative rhinos one vote at a time. Brandon, I want to ask you something, get your opinion on something that I alluded to earlier. Before 2016, before Trump ran for president, I went back and looked at this earlier. The top Democrats in the country were warning us against the vulnerabilities of our machine-based voting system. Kamala Harris, U.S. Senator Ron Weldon, Amy Klobuchar, the deplorable Adam Schiff, who I can barely look at without wanting to walk outside and vomit, much less listen to him. But anyway, they were all talking about how vulnerable machines are, the voting machines are. And then Trump runs and wins, and it's like they never talk about the vulnerabilities of the voting machines anymore. Do you think that has something to do with why do the Democrats rarely, if ever, talk about the problems with these machines anymore?
Well, it's politics, Chris. Me and you both know that it's politics. But I can tell you one thing, that every Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter your party affiliation, but everybody should be able to get behind trustworthy and honest elections. I think that's what every good American wants, is just honesty and integrity when they go to the ballot box, and that's what we're going to deliver. But again, that's not something that's just a Republican issue or a Democrat issue or whatever, but I think every good citizen wants fair and honest elections, and they want the will of the people that's what happens, is the will of the people carried out.
And it sounds like, based on what you're telling me, Brandon, which is obviously consistent with what Alex Haldeman and many of the other national experts have said, Andrew Apple of Princeton, Richard DeMillo of Georgia Tech, Richard Stark of Berkeley, the best cyber experts in the world have said that these ballot marking devices can be hacked, and they can be hacked without being detected. So you just said that we're going to secure our voting system. It sounds to me like it can't be done unless we do away with these ballot marking devices and these machines once and for all.
Absolutely, and that's why I've been telling everybody as I've been traveling the state the last several weeks and months, is that the day that we're inaugurated as your next Secretary of State, we will have that legislation already written and sent over to the legislature and start lobbying them to change that Louisiana law, and we're going to go to hand-marked secure paper ballots. That is the only way that that's been proven time and time again to have fair and safe and secure, honest elections. There should be no concerns about this is going to take forever and there's going to be long lines. Look, folks, Texas delivers some of the best results and timely results in our country, and they're using hand-marked secure paper ballots over there. We've run multiple tests, and with 100% accuracy in a very timely manner. But you'll have your results the night of the election, no different than Abraham Lincoln had in 1860. Trust me, they weren't using Dominion voting machines back then. They were using paper ballots, and he knew that night. And that's the same thing that's going to happen in Louisiana. You'll know within hours of those polls closing who won those statewide races.
Yeah, I noticed, Brandon, that's a great point. I notice whenever I read Secretary Ardwan's things that he writes, he always seems to focus on the quickness of getting the returns in, the quickness of getting the results in. And my response internally and my response publicly has been, fraud can be committed very efficiently. You can get fraudulent results in very quickly. It's like, who cares if you get the voting results in within an hour or two if they're fraudulent? And that's what I don't understand. But what you're saying basically is we can have secure, hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots and also deliver a timely, efficient, and accurate result.
Absolutely. The proof's in the pudding. Texas already does it, and they do a great job at it. So there shouldn't be no concern there. We're gonna prove this time and time again. But to your point, I mentioned earlier the most sacred thing that we have, Chris, as an American citizen, is our right to vote. So if it took a few more hours, or if it took a little bit longer, what does it matter? You know, I say it time and time again: is elections have consequences, and unfair elections have massive consequences and critical consequences. Unfair elections is what brings on critical race theory. Unfair elections is when you have the men beating up on the girls in women's sports. That's what unfair elections has brought to the United States, and I've had enough of it.
Well said, Brandon. And your point is exactly what I have always thought. Do you not believe that the average American would even be willing to wait a day or two extra if they could be 100% certain that their vote was accurate and that the result was an accurate reflection of the opinion of the people? I don't think anybody would care at all about that. But there's another thing I wanted to mention. Go ahead, Brandon.
Chris. That's not even going to be an issue that, I would think that people would wait now, no matter how long it takes to make sure it's 100% accuracy. But again, that's not even going to be a concern. You'll have the results the night of the election. We'll have those results. It's not going to be a concern. But again, we have to. These elections have been sold and marketed to us. You can vote on your phone in certain states, vote online, vote in. The COVID pandemic came in, and so we were sold all across the country on mail-in ballots, and so our Constitution took a back seat to mail-in ballots, and elections were rigged all across our country. At the end of the day, we have to have safe, secure, honest elections, no matter what. But we're gonna deliver a product that is safe and secure, hand-marked paper ballots. You'll know the night of the election, and you're gonna know on statewide races all at the same time. We won't be waiting on Orleans. We won't be waiting on East Baton Rouge Parish or Shreveport or wherever the case. You're going to get the results all at the same time. Every single parish is going to raise their little flag and say, we're ready, and say, okay, well, just hold up. When all 64 parishes are ready, we're going to let the people know the results of those statewide races. We won't be waiting on anybody so they can have any funny business going on.
Brandon, one of the issues that's been raised by some of these clerks of court is that if we've got to hand count these ballots, physical ballots, we're not going to be able to get commissioners in here to work. Commissioners are going to quit. We're not going to be able to get anybody here to do this work. We have a hard enough time getting commissioners now. You know, you've heard that. That's what the clerk's excuse is. How do you respond to that?
Well, so first of all, I think our clerks do a great job for the most part. I know my clerk does a great job. She does exactly what she's been trained to do for many, many years, and she does a great job. But I do reject the notion that this is going to take forever. They take 10 to 12 days to certify the election anyway, and that's what they're doing now with the machines. And so, again, you'll have the results through a tabulator, to run that hand-marked secure paper ballot through a tabulator. You'll know the unofficial results the night of the election, just like you do now, and then we have 10 and 12 days to certify that election. When I voted Saturday, I intentionally went very, very late in the day. I was the 143rd person to come through the line. That amount of votes can be hand counted within an hour. There's not going to be problems certifying our elections. That's just it's just hogwash is what it is.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned, Brandon, in your press release about running was you talked a little bit about bid rigging, going back to, I guess it was 2021 when it appears, and a number of people think, Sharon, you had certainly thought so, that the Secretary of State was trying to channel the contract, the election system contract, to Dominion, basically it was only due to pressure from a number of people that he backed up on that, and even some complaints from some of the other vendors. What is your understanding of what went down there?
Yeah, Chris, good point. But I'm not the guy that is raising all these questions of bid rigging. They've had Republicans do it. They've had Democrats do it. Our governor has done it. They're all the ones bringing up these allegations.
They are. And when we come back from this break, I want to talk a little bit about that, because I know there was a prominent state senator who called Secretary Kyle out on it, a number of other people, including other companies. And I want to talk about that when we get back, and how we almost ended up with Dominion for another 10-year contract. Can you hold over the break?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Brandon J. Alexander, for the Big John Mason, and we'll be back shortly. J. Christopher Alexander for the Big John Mason. I've got Brandon Trosclair with me in this final segment before I close it out on the next one. Brandon, the final topic I wanted to talk to you about tonight was this, some of the allegations that have been made against the Secretary of State about trying to rig the bid process back in 2021. I know ultimately he shelved his search for the new voting machines entirely after a number of vendors and political leaders in Louisiana criticized the bid process. And I know Senator Sharon Hewitt was very, very hot about that issue. She headed the Election Oversight Committee. I would suspect you would agree that at a minimum there's a real appearance of impropriety there.
There's no doubt, and it's well documented. Again, I'm not the guy that's making this up, but
right.
Back in November 30th of 2018, there was allegations of political meddling in the Dominion voting machine contract, and in December of 18, our governor voided the contract with Dominion voting machines. And then what you had mentioned is in March 3rd of 2021, Sharon Hewitt, one of our state senators, said that the people have lost trust in this election system, and we must conduct a thorough, transparent process. And that's when they started that committee. So again, this is well documented with the lack of leadership that's going on at the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah, and Brandon, you make a great point. That was actually in 2021 was actually the second time that Secretary Kyle had to quit or suspend the bid effort. That was the second time, because you're right, he did, and I'd forgotten about that. He did run into similar problems in 18, similar criticism. So both times that he's tried to draw this contract out and bid this work, both times he's had to suspend the effort because of criticisms of impropriety. That's pretty significant. And I'm glad you reminded me about the 2018.
Yes, sir. Like I said, it's very significant, and he's trying a third time as we speak right now. So, we're working hard to stop that.
Yeah. Brandon, I want to give you a minute. Any final words regarding your run, where you go from here for your listeners?
Yeah, man. Man, I appreciate you having me on the show again, Mr. Chris. And look, I'm a businessman, successful business guy in South Louisiana and Mississippi. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a political insider. I'm not looking for a job. I don't need a job. I have a great job as it is. But I can no longer sit on the sidelines and watch one of our most sacred process as an American citizen just get ruined and run over. And we're going to work hard. We're going to be very transparent and professional. And I look forward to meeting a lot of folks traveling the state. We've been to a lot of women's groups already, and we're looking to go into a lot of PECs and just meeting a lot of people out there. And what's very encouraging out there is I don't think that this is the big elephant in the room. Everybody knows the people know what's going on. They're very aware of what's going on, and they're mad, Chris. They're mad, and they want action. They no longer trust this man to do this job that he's been elected to do, and they want change. And we're going to bring that change to them, and we're going to deliver results to the people of Louisiana.
Brandon, I've always said that since I've been involved in political advocacy, I've always said that the problem is not the citizens. The problem is the politicians who do one thing in office and then go home and lie to the citizens. And people like you and me and many others throughout the state are in the process of making sure the citizens are informed about the truth, because when the citizens know the truth, you can count on the heart and the spirit and the courage of the American people and the people of Louisiana. We just have to arm them with the truth. And as you know, as a Christian, Brandon, and as I know, the truth shall set us free. God bless you, man. Thank you for coming on tonight. You're a great American, and I look forward to working with you. And I do want you to know that whether you're there or not, I'm going back out to Ralph's for another piece of that chicken.
Well, sounds good, Mr. Chris. I appreciate you and all what you're doing, man, and keep delivering the results for the people of Louisiana. I appreciate you.
God bless you, my brother. Have a great evening.
You too.
We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, with one last segment, because there's one final thing I need to tell you. Don't go anywhere. John Christopher Alexander sitting in.
Keep talking.
It's over?
Yeah, keep talking, bro. You got to keep going.
For the big John Mason. Do we have one more segment?
No, we don't go to break yet. We got to keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
I thought I heard smoke on the water in the background there.
Oh,
I apologize.
Not yet. Keep going.
No, it just must be the fog down here in Baton Rouge.
You're fine.
Anyway,
You're fine.
so I just want the listeners to know that if we have a secure voting system in Louisiana, we can count on the people of Louisiana to do the right things and to vote for good constitutional conservative candidates and principles. If we don't have a secure voting system, we don't have a republic anymore. We don't have any freedom anymore. And it doesn't matter how eloquent the arguments are that we make. It doesn't matter how many doors we knock on. It doesn't matter how much money we have. None of that matters if we can't rely on the integrity of our vote when we go into that voting booth. And with these machines that are in place in Louisiana, it is indisputable that they are vulnerable to hacking and switching of votes and manipulation. And our Secretary of State will not confront that issue directly, and he is complicit in our vulnerability as far as our vote goes. And we have to recognize that. That's where we are. Fundamental is the security of our vote. And Brandon is right. The people of Louisiana are waking up and understanding that if we can't go into a voting booth and know that our vote is accurate and our intent is reflected in that vote, we don't have a country anymore, and we don't have a state anymore. This election for the Secretary of State is arguably the most important race we have next year. So we need to wake up and make sure that we have someone in that office who makes sure that we have secure, hand-marked, hand-counted, physical paper ballots. That's the only way to secure our system. That's it. www.lacag.org, Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group. This is John Christopher Alexander for the Big John Mason. It's always a pleasure to sit in for the Big John Mason. As I always say about Big John, it's bad that he's got such big shoes to fill, but it's good that there's plenty of room in there. I come from a family of 12 kids, and I was cramped a good bit growing up. But Big John Mason shoes, they got plenty of room in there. God bless you all. I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight, and Merry Christmas to you. And as the great William F. Buckley says, in vain we shall go, even though he's saying it from heaven now. In vain we shall go. I want to give a shout out to all the great members of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Connie Sampagnaro, Toby Thibodeau, Katie Alexander, Candy Peavy, everybody who is working with us to move this state forward and to expose the rhinos, one vote at a time. God bless you all, and Merry Christmas. And remember what the reason for the season is. Have a great night.